The whole portfolio will probably do about, $17 or $20 million this year. It's a very profitable business. For every one person we have, we get about 50,000 listeners. And I did the same analysis across Comcast and Disney, and they're getting about 10 or 15,000 views or listens for every one person or employee they have. It's very much a winner-take-all business. It takes years to build these things, and just 10 podcasts capture a third of all listenership, and I bet the top 100 capture 2/3. So of the 1.6 million podcasts, 600,000 put out content every week. So 999,900 are fighting over 1/3 of the listener base. That's how difficult it is. I think it's probably easier to become an NBA player than it is to have a successful podcast at this point. Welcome to Office Hours with Prof G. It's Scott-free August. Oh God, we all needed that. Which means we're bringing you something a little different. This is the first in a 3-part series featuring some of our favorite Office Hours questions. Today's theme, my favorite topic, me. This episode is all about questions I've received about my life, my values, and the company we're building, Prof G Media. Let's bust right into it.
Hey Scott, this is Barbaros from Istanbul, long-time listener and reader. I have a question for you that you might not like answering, but I think you will appreciate it. So the other day I was reading the corporate life cycle from Aspect Modern, which I got to know through your podcast. Thank you for that. And he was talking about how long-lasting businesses usually have a succession plan in place. They usually think about succession just in case, and they end up, lasting longer. But then I can't help but notice that the podcasts that you release, like Prof G Markers, Prof G Podcasts, yes, they're based on your personal branding, but what happens if you decide to start one day? Or if you decide to pass it over, to Ed and a team? Does that mean you will have to rebrand, or do you have a succession plan that you wish to share?
Barbaros from Istanbul. That's a good question. It would be relevant, but I'm going to live forever. Yes, that's right. The midlife crisis arrested adolescence tour continues. New dates announced. Okay, enough of that. Yeah. This business is getting to the point where I need to be thoughtful about creating enterprise value. When it's just a small number of individuals, you don't have a business or an enterprise, you have a practice, and people are too dependent upon one individual. I think about this a lot. Realistically, I'd like to think I have 20 good years in me. I know I have 10 good years left in me, but okay, still, a lot of people are making good money here. You want them to continue to make good money. And any business that's just dependent upon one business, you need to be thinking the way you're thinking about succession strategy. So what have I done? One, you noticed I've brought in Ed Elson, and Ed is the co-host of Markets. At some point sooner, actually, I'd like it to be sooner, I want Ed to start co-hosting with guest hosts that aren't me, such that over time, Prof G Markets is the brand, not ScottGalloway. I'm focused on getting us to 20 or 30 million in revenue with 15 million in EBITDA. I think I can do that in the next 3 to 4 years, and then build a series of voices that I help foster, create good businesses, and slowly but surely reduce the dependence on my voice. I would start a job thinking, all right, I either need to have an exit for people or build something where they could have 10, 20, 30 years of real solid earnings and help build economic security. And this isn't an obvious company that you sell, although to a certain extent, every 4 years you sell the cash flows, and you can actually make tens of millions of dollars now if you're we have 3 top 100 podcasts right now, which is exceptional. We're very good at what we do, and we've also been very fortunate. So you can kind of every 4 years, we're in the midst of this now, renegotiate a deal. And the way I try and build economic security is I give, and also just selfishly to keep everyone engaged and acting like an owner, is I give everyone, or not everyone, but the majority of the full-time employees a percentage of our revenues. And so the question is, how do you maintain those revenue flows after, I start going Biden, if you will? And by the way, I do not run the business. My partner, Catherine Dillon, has been running the business for the last few years. I have talented producers. So the risk is that I'm kind of the front end of the talent end, and we're going to need to dilute and diversify away from that over the next 3, 5, 10 years, and we have a plan for that. But it's a correct question. Thank you for asking. A board strategy, a good fiduciary, focuses on succession strategy, and that is German companies demand that the CEO take at least 4 weeks off every year, and if the company goes to shit when they're gone, they fire the CEO because they need an enterprise. They don't need a practice. Thanks for the question. Support for the show comes from Constant Contact. When it comes to growing your business, we all know that engaging with customers is crucial, but the question is always, okay, great, but how do you do that? Most of us don't have the time, skills, or money to put towards keeping up with marketing every day. We're too busy running our companies. Well, let me introduce you to Constant Contact. Your mini marketing team awaits. Constant Contact's marketing platform is here to make marketing way easier and way more effective for small business. The best part? You don't need to know anything about marketing. With their all-in-one platform, you can create and manage attention-grabbing campaigns in just a few clicks. Email, text, social media, events, landing pages, you name it, it's all in one place. No more juggling dozens of different tools with the help of their AI tool, which helps you turn a rough idea into a ready-to-go message faster than ever. You also get automated sending, real-time reporting, and tools that actually help drive sales. So you're not just marketing your business, you're growing it. Get a free 30-day trial when you go to ConstantContact.com. Try Constant Contact free for 30 days at ConstantContact.com. ConstantContact.com. I'd love to learn more about how you produce all the podcasts, from selecting guests, scheduling pre-production to post-production of each episode. How is the team structured for Prof G, and how do you think about producing a high volume of content across brands? Basically, when the recording session ends, what happens next? Our podcast universe is Pivot, which is with my co-host Kara Swisher. Vox owns the IP there, so we can't, take it and go somewhere else. And then I started a portfolio of podcasts. There's Prof G, which is this, Prof G Conversations, which is generally a long-form interview. Prof G Markets, which is with my co-host Ed Elson. We specifically talk about the markets and stocks. Prof G Raging Moderates, which is a political podcast hosted with Jessica Tarloff. Office Hours, which is my favorite, which is, this, where people just write in. And we try to give them unfiltered, no mercy, no malice advice or responses to their questions. And then No Mercy, No Malice, which is George Hahn reading over my newsletter that I put out every Friday. We get a lot of inbound inquiry to be on the show because we've aggregated a fairly large audience, and we tend to hit young, wealthy men who are impossible to reach because they're all avoiding commercials by being on Netflix and Spotify. So the great white rhino of the consumer economy and then the election is our audience. Our audience is, the average is a 34-year-old male who makes $150,000 a year. That is, quite frankly, a baller. That is somebody that brands want to reach because they're in their mating years and spending money on stupid shit like coffee and watches and shoes and, SaaS-based software because they want to be more attractive to mates or get promoted or scale their business. Are we ruthless around guests? We want to find guests that are famous people, yes, but more than that, we're trying to find people that other people haven't heard of before. Kyla Scanlon, the economist on TikTok, I think she's like 26, reminds me of Ed. I think she's fantastic, so we bring her on regularly. Alice Hahn, this China analyst from Green Mantle, I think she's just a huge find. We've had her on 3 times now. So Aswat Damodaran, who's probably been on more than anyone else. I just think he's fascinating, and I don't know if you know Aswat, he's a colleague at NYU, but he's the best, hands down the best teacher there, maybe one of the best teachers in the world. So I would rather find someone that people don't know than when people come on, some famous CEO comes on, I'm like, okay, boss, you're fucking everywhere. What are you going to tell me you haven't said everywhere in the last 48 hours? So we try to thread the needle between someone that people are interested in hearing from and someone who's not just whoring themselves out everywhere, which is hard because people don't want to come on their podcast unless they're in whore stage, if you will. A lot of effort goes into guests. Now, people think that I am someone who works around the clock and produces just a ton of content on my own. The key to all of this and the key in business is a very simple statement. Greatness is in the agency of others. Prof G is, I think, 14 or 16 full-time people and probably 6 or 8 contractors, video producers or video editors, podcast producers, data analysts. Catherine Dillon runs the business, editors, fact checkers, finance people. I have a tech guy who follows me around the world and makes sure that everything sounds good and is well lit. So we have a ton of people, much less the co-hosts. So these people give our stuff scale and make it professional. I'm always traveling. We try to record the same time each week and punch out a bunch of stuff. So usually I'll sit down and 5 hours later for Prof G and office hours. I have a bunch of stuff that will trickle out during the week, and then we throw it over the wall to our video team that slices and dices it, and then they throw it over the wall to our social media team that then just snakes it through all the different channels. I work a lot less hard than people think. I'm very good at not working. I worked pretty much around the clock for, 25 years of my life, call it 25 to 50. And I decided to kind of get off that hamster wheel and now have a team of people that does all this. So what you're listening to now, I started recording about 2 minutes after I sat down, and 2 minutes after it's over, I will leave. Not because I have work after for 2 minutes, but I like to make everyone laugh. And then everyone else starts to work. We're even talking about having a producer here in London, such that when the production teams end at midnight in the US, we go, it's 5 a.m. here. Someone wakes up here and can begin working. And with Prof G Markets, we're going to daily. So we're really going to have a lot of content, if you will. I'm thinking about launching 2 more podcasts. I'd like to do a Prof G China podcast. I'd like to do a Prof G Economics podcast because we're good at this. We have an infrastructure. I find it interesting. And while I thought I was just going to have sort of some fun with this, it's turning into a real business. The total portfolio does, and I'm open about money. The whole portfolio will probably do about, $17 or $20 million this year. It's a very profitable business. It's very much a winner-take-all business. It takes years to build these things, and just 10 podcasts are responsible or capture a third of all listenership, and I bet the top 100 capture 2/3. So the 1.6 million podcasts, 600,000 put out content every week. So 5,999,900 are fighting over 1/3 of the listener base. That's how difficult it is. I think it's probably easier to become an NBA player than it is to have a successful podcast at this point. But if you're blessed with having a successful podcast, it's a very lucrative business because the means of production here, I did an analysis. For every one person we have, we get about 50,000 downloads or listeners. And I did the same analysis across Comcast and Disney, and they're getting about 10 or 15,000 views or listens for every one person or employee they have. So the means of production are more efficient here. And so while these are a small business, $20 million isn't a big business, it's very, very profitable. It's growing 20 to 30% a year. And now my greed glands are going again. I'm starting to think about launching new podcasts, packaging it all. We're a disciplined company. We try to make great content. We try to be fearless. We try to be entertaining. One of our cultural standards is we overcompensate people. People never think they're overcompensated, but they are, at least here at Prof G. We are, to a certain extent, monetizing my brand and background. We get exceptional advertiser rates. If you just run ads in an ad network or on AdSense, you're getting $2 or $3 CPMs. We get between $30 and $50 CPMs because, see above, we get this incredibly attractive audience, and we make really good money. And I don't want to go through the hassle of hiring and firing and upskilling. So we hire good people I've worked with for a long time or that come highly recommended. We pay them 30 to 50% above market, and they don't leave. And I find that's just an easier, more enjoyable way to run a business and your life, so to speak. And it's all a bit of a flywheel. The podcast creates speaking opportunities. I make about $4 million a year speaking. I charge an average of about $125,000, $150,000 a speaking gig. I do about 30 a year, 25 a year. The books, I make about $1 million, $1.2 million on each book. Is that right? Maybe $1.5 million, including international. And obviously the podcasts and the speaking support the books. And then the newsletter that goes out every week, we don't monetize it. We've just started monetizing. We're making about $8,000 or $10,000 a newsletter, getting an advertiser sponsor. That goes out to about 350,000 people. It used to be 500,000, and then we cleaned out the people who hadn't opened in a month, a lot of bots. And it all is sort of a flywheel, right? The downloads inspire more book sales. The book sales inspire more speaking gigs. The speaking gigs, inspire more newsletter, more downloads, and the wheel flies, right? So trying to create a kind of a content flywheel that supports it. It's a nice business. It's a media business. And once you hit a certain scale, it's very profitable. As you can imagine, it's a decent lift. Thanks for the question.
Support for the show comes from the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Let's talk ROI, return on indoctrination. Vouchers are defunding public education and propping up private religious schools. At the same time, states are mandating religious displays and appointing unqualified chaplains in place of trained staff. This isn't innovation. It's regression. The Freedom from Religion Foundation wants to be the firewall. FFRF uses litigation, lobbying, and media to defend the separation of church and state and keep your tax dollars funding education, not ideology. Visit ffrf.us/school or text SCOTT to 511 511. That's Scott to 511-511 or ffrf.us/school. Message and data rates may apply. Do you want a functioning society? It starts with secular schools.
Hey, Scott. This is Sean calling from the Sunshine State of Florida. I'm a huge fan of you and all of your shows. While I've heard you speak about many, many things, and this show is called Office Hours, I've somehow missed you discuss your life working in academia. I began adjunct teaching on the side while working in the clinical world of healthcare. I realized I absolutely love teaching, and more importantly, I loved helping students discover their potential career path in healthcare, despite the fact that I still have much to learn in my mid-30s. This year, I accepted a full-time position as a teaching professor at a university in Florida, which has been an amazing experience thus far. My question for you is, what originally got you motivated to teach? And did your feelings change about teaching as the years went on? Like you, I'm not coming from a PhD background, but rather from working in the clinical world. I fear there will eventually be some sort of ceiling effect for me, both financially and just the idea of teaching the same thing year after year. I'm grateful for what I'm doing and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, but I also like looking at the crystal ball, and I'm just eager to continuously grow as both a person and a professional, which is why I love all your shows. Thanks for your answer, and thanks for all that you do.
Wow, Sean from Florida, we're going to need a bigger boat. So let's bring this back to me. My whole life, I've wanted to be a teacher. I thought I would really enjoy it and I'd be good at it. And I contemplated when I was in business school applying to the PhD program and getting my PhD and pursuing a career in academia. And a couple things happened. One, my mom got very sick, and I knew that I would need to start making money, that I just didn't have the capacity to take on another 3 years of student debt or not be making money in a PhD program. And also some of it is less noble. I just thought I'd really like to get out there and start making real bank. And I didn't see how I was going to do that as a prof, at least initially. So I went out, I gave myself 10 years before I would go back to teaching. And exactly 10 years later, in 2002, after graduating from Haas in 1992, I joined the faculty at NYU. And one of the motivations for joining was I thought I was going to be rich and that I could leave and just go focus on teaching. And I took a job paying $12,000 a year as an adjunct professor at NYU. And as you know, you have your plans, and then God laughs. My company, Red Envelope, did go public, and on paper, I was worth a lot of money. And then I wasn't when the dot-bomb implosion happened. So I kind of woke up and realized I was an adjunct professor making $12,000 a year. Now, having said that, I think academia is a wonderful career. It's definitely a caste system. It's definitely some of the most discriminatory business in the world. Essentially, the people in charge hire their PhD buddies. They write bullshit research, which is 98% of peer-reviewed academic research is just bullshit to give each other citations such that they can qualify. They can get tenure, which is guaranteed lifetime employment, which translates to student debt, as 2/3 of these individuals within 20 years are totally unproductive and overpaid. And tenure is this kind of this grift where, because Galileo said the world might be round and we thought we need to protect academics, we've decided that the guy who came up with Gap 1 accounting in 1985 deserves lifetime employment. It's just fucking stupid. The result is a crowding at the top of the pyramid, and young academics who are really outstanding have trouble moving up because these people will not leave. And most of this, quote unquote, tenure is nothing but a gild and a tax on young people, which translates to student debt. The administrative state is out of control at universities. My department chair, or one of my department chairs in marketing, was essentially a pretty weak academic who was a functioning or semi-functioning alcoholic. So I know, let's give her an administrative role. Look, you're going in as a practicing professor. Here are some tips. One, this is a business. And the way you increase your compensation is by putting butts in seats. You're probably not going to do great peer-reviewed research. I was thinking about doing peer-reviewed research, and then I read it. I'm like, this is stupid. None of this shit has any relevance to anything. And so I started doing a lot of research, but I did it under the guise of a private company called L2. And I got way more press and kind of private sector impact than almost any of the peer-reviewed research, maybe with the exception of some of the peer-reviewed research that the finance department does, which bubbles up. Guys like David Yermak and Aswat the Motor and his isn't peer-reviewed research, but it's just so powerful. But anyways, what I found is that the key to a currency, and there's 4 or 5 of these people, essentially at NYU Stern, we have 4 or 5 ringers, and that is a professor that everyone feels like they got to take, a Glenn Oken or a Sonia Marciano at NYU. They are clinicals. They don't have PhDs. They're practicing professors, but they're outstanding teachers. And because it's a business, they have to have a certain number of classes that everyone, if they take 3 or 4 of these, they feel like they got their money's worth. Those people have real currency and power. I became one of those people. I became one of the ringers. And so I could put 500 butts and seats every year, which at $7,000 per class, which is what we charge at NYU Stern, you're technically generating $3.5 million in income. They're paying you a lot less than that, but you have some currency. So the key for you, my friend, is just becoming outstanding at teaching and getting more butts and seats. I would avoid the administrative state. If it's a means of helping out, fine. But for the most part, I think it's mostly a waste of time. I find that most of the administration and kind of program stuff on campus is just people pushing paper to each other. And my career took off when I decided I was going to do nothing. I was never going to spend any time on campus unless I was teaching. To do a market check. And what you do is you quit every 3 to 5 years without quitting. Every 3 to 5 years, I would interview at another university. I'd get called by a Cornell or a Wharton or Columbia. I'd interview, I'd find out what the offer would be, and then I'd go to the dean or my department chair and say, I don't want to leave. I'd be transparent, but this is my current value in the marketplace. And I knew I had some currency because, fortunately for me, the marketing department was not very strong in terms of in-room teaching, and they would match it. And so, you got to recognize that the leadership of universities generally sees adjuncts and clinicals as sort of, I don't know, like Russian soldiers that they just kind of throw into the meat grinder. And that is, it's your calling. You don't actually need health benefits or money. We save that for the tenured faculty. So you have to create your own currency through butts and seats, and then you have to leverage it by occasionally interviewing with another university. Now, that's kind of the politics of how the sausage is made. Having said that, you generally are in an environment where people are not assholes. They fight over every little thing because there's so little at risk or there's so little to be gained. But generally speaking, the people are pretty nice. The best academics are some of the most inspiring people you ever run across. Being on campus is incredibly inspiring. You do feel as if you're adding value. Being around young people is just incredibly, invigorating. But let me finish where I started. A lot there. A lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD, but a lot of reward too. Thanks for the question, Sean.